Welcome to Nutmeg Nation with Carlene Humphrey.
Hi, I'm Carlene, and this is Nutmeg Nation. I am your host, and I have with me on Zoom Dr. Diego Humphrey, and he's in Oklahoma. Hi, Diego. Dr.
Hi,
Diego.
hi, Carlene.
How are
Call me
you?
Uncle D. That's
I'll call
just
you
fine
Uncle
right
D.
now.
Okay.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah, we
For
made the
sure.
professional title already, and that will take care of that. Going forward, Uncle D.
So tell me, for those that don't know a lot about St. George's University, what is it about the school that brings so many students to the country?
Well, basically, the school started with Charles Modica. He was attempting to go to medical school himself, and then he became professionally as a lawyer. But then he had this idea together with his father to start off a medical school. It turned out to be in the Caribbean, eventually in Grenada, eventually. But to provide access to many of the good students, actually, who were trying to get into medicine and was not able to do it. And fortunately, he met with Eric Gairy, our prime minister at the time, who also had a fantastic idea to try to promote education in Grenada. And they came up with that offshore for U.S. medical school. And so the first chartered class was, I think, 1977. It took off from there. Right now, the majority of students that started the school were Americans. And the agreement or arrangement that they had is to start providing scholarships to Grenadians. Unfortunately, I was among the first Grenadian that went into the medical school. It was five of us, and lo and behold, somewhere along the way, the other four dropped off, and I struggled through the whole process and eventually got my MD.
I didn't know that.
Yeah,
Yeah.
it was, and I think I remember it was what Charmaine Steele, Jennifer Edwards, Ray Charles, Clinton Lewis, and myself.
You
And
remember everyone in your class.
everyone,
Wow.
yeah, because it was a special group, and everything was new to us. A matter of fact, we did not have the pre-med or master's degree to go into the school itself. So they joined up with Truett McConnell College in Georgia, Cleveland, Georgia, and they allowed a pre-med program designed for us as Grenadians. And then that's how we were able to make that first semester into the school, accepted into the school itself.
When you think about med school, a lot of programs, like you either study in United States or Canada, like if you were in India and you come here, you can't just practice medicine. It
Right.
doesn't interpret the same way. I guess it's because of the system, right? Like you were able to study the American system in Grenada, which makes it easier to study anywhere in the US, right?
A somewhat difficult thing for us, well, for me as a Grenadian and not a U.S. citizen, I could not, and that's how I end up in England. I could not, after finishing the first 2 years of training in Grenada, I couldn't come up to the U.S. to start the clinicals. So we end up in England and doing the clinical rotations out there, and then come back to the U.S. after graduation, essentially.
Oh, okay.
It was a difficult time. It was growing years for the school and for the students in there.
Like the test of
Oh,
the actual program itself.
that's a separate topic it's of its own.
Oh, okay.
Because yeah, it was a difficult thing in every step that we had to go through. Initially, U.S. hospitals were very rejectful of our students. They didn't want to accept our students to begin with. And through a lot of work and arrangement that Dr. Modica had with professors, even some retirees, and through arrangement with them where they practice, they were able to get our students to, enter the program, like residency and training like that. Most of the students, they just work the dickens out, work very hard. And once they get into any program, they just continue to work like crazy, I would say. And that just showed them, even myself personally, that's what happened. Once I get into the program, it took me quite a while to get into the US residency training. But once I got in, you just work yourself to make sure that you're well known for what you are, essentially.
Yeah, you're trying to make your mark in the
Yeah,
program.
yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, you get a chance and you make the best of it. As a matter of fact, after I finished my residency in internal medicine, I was one of the first they chose for the cardiology fellowship because of the features that I showed as a resident in internal medicine.
Talking about your education, it obviously stems from where growing up in Grenada and, going to school and then realizing that this is something that you want to do. So I read that your aunt was your kind of like a little bit of an inspiration or someone that helped you decide that this is something you wanted to do.
Well, yes, that's correct. Auntie or Teacher German is what
Yeah,
we
teacher
call
German,
it.
yes, bless her heart,
Yeah, bless her
Yeah.
heart. Yeah, and may she continue to rest in peace. When she did district nursing in Bolio, I
Mhm.
remember vividly when she did the clinic. There were certain days that they do different types of clinic, and I happened to wander into the clinic and I just got a sense of what they were doing, and taking care of wounds, and soul coming there, different things like that. So that's where the caring part went into it for me.
Mhm.
The rest of it, though, if I had to pick on one thing, it's just the gift that I got, really.
Yeah.
Yeah, because things opened out for me in certain ways. I give you a little story, actually. You may not know that, and a lot of people might not know that. I never really liked school. Starting off in Birch Grove.
Really?
Yeah,
Oh, I learned something new.
yeah,
Wow.
it's a funny story.
Yeah.
We grew up. Nez's house, my grandmother's house, is right next to Johnson Estate.
Mhm.
And right there, there was a little river, a little creek that runs across the road. And right in the estate, there were lots of things to do. And so when the mommy sent me to school, that was Brush Grove RC School at that time. I never really went to school. I just stayed on the estate and played and this like that. And, I would go home after school or lunchtime because we walked up from Brush Grove to the to Nez's house on Shard Hill. And then mommy would come up and say, "What did you learn in school today?" ABC, mommy, ABC. So for after a while, it was just ABC alone. And I didn't know much. So you get a sense that he was not going to school. And a matter of fact, the workers on the estate told mommy he was not going to school. 10 o'clock, they would see him playing by the river or things like that. So finally, she brought it's a funny story, but she brought me to this boyfriend that she had was a police officer. He said, "You need to go to school, otherwise he'll put me in that little jail in there." And he showed me that little 2 by 2 cell. I said, "Oh my
Oh,
God, I
no.
cannot go in there here." From that time, I started going to school, and it took off from there. I mean, I was just knowing everything, and everything just fall into place.
Wow. I
Yeah,
mean,
from
what
there.
a way to
Yeah,
really
yeah.
give you a picture of your life. Like, I mean, how old were you when he told you that? Like, I
Well,
mean,
you bring a thing back to mind now. By the time mommy moved me down from Birch Grove to Grand Dance, I was like 13 years old.
yeah.
And at that time, to tell you the honest truth, I had difficulties even spelling my name. My middle name was like Sebastian. I was
Yeah.
not even able to spell my name.
I didn't even realize that that's your middle name until I
That's
read it
my
out.
middle
I was
name.
just like,
Yeah.
oh, Sebastian. I'm like, now I know why Sebastian has his name. That makes
Yeah.
sense.
Yeah.
Sebastian's my cousin, Uncle Dee's son. But yeah, it's wow.
Yeah.
What a story. I find it so interesting to hear
Yeah.
the things that we did when we were children, right? I was
Right.
yeah,
Right.
telling someone about me in Grenada, and I didn't skip school, but I did something. I just remember writing about this today, Uncle Dee. There were snacks in school. I remember this
Yeah.
vaguely, but I think you pay like a quarter for the snack. And somehow, because it was so good, I used my bus fare to buy
Mm.
another snack. And
Wow.
then when it came time for me to go home,
You had to walk.
I don't know if I had to walk or if I had to ask. I think maybe the principal or someone had to give me money to get on the bus, and I think I got in so much trouble when I got home after that because they're like, "Why did you use I use my extra money, right? Because they give you money for your recess snack and for your bus fare, and I just
Uh,
used both. I'm like, oh my gosh, like the things that I did when I was younger. So it's just interesting that you weren't even going to class. You're kind of playing like Tom Sawyer at the end of the day
well,
when you
yeah,
think about it,
yeah. But that was, that was a
Yeah.
young age. I mean,
Yeah,
young
13.
thing.
That's so young.
But
Yeah.
after that,
Hmm.
when mom brought me down to Grand Dance, it was a
Yeah.
total different story. Then I was so serious. I tell you,
Yeah.
the teacher didn't, pay attention to what they were doing. I would
Hmm.
go home and complain to mommy. That teacher is not doing right. You should send me to a different school.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh my
and that's
gosh,
it.
that's so interesting. Wow. Talking about memories, because you were growing up in the 80s, do you remember the invasion in Grenada?
The invasion time, I was in England.
Oh, you were.
Yeah, that
Oh,
was 83, and that's
yeah.
where I was doing my clinical rotation then. Now, I
Yeah.
do remember though when I was in Shaper School in the 70s, we had a lot of demonstration at that time, and we participated in this. I participated in some of them.
Hmm.
But the invasion time, no, I was in England at that time.
So the part I think I want to understand is med school, because you said you only did 2 years, and then did you do four
That's
years?
pre-med. That's
Pre-med.
pre-med.
Okay, so
Pre-med.
for those of us who don't understand med school, for me, I thought med school is 4 years.
Right.
And
It
then
it is.
yeah,
It
okay,
is.
so 4 years.
Yeah.
So explain to me the 4 years before you actually have to go and do clinical and so on.
The first 2 years is like mainly theory.
Right.
So you're in a classroom, you do biochemistry, you do anatomy, and all these subjects are every stage you got to go through them and
Yeah.
stuff. And so towards the latter part of that 2 years, you start getting ready for preclinicals. You start doing like some of the students in Grenada, they would be going to the hospital under clerkship. They were working with the doctors in the hospital, but they're starting, like the medical student, they're starting to learn how to take history from the patient, how to get information from the patient in the hospital or in the clinic,
Yeah.
for example. So like when I go down there, I even have some medical student rotate with me, both in the hospital and in the office, in the clinic down there. But then that would take about 2 years. And then the other 2 years is really detailed hospital clinical rotation. That would carry you through all the different specialties. So you do surgery, you do medicine, in the different areas in internal medicine itself, pulmonary, nephrology, neurology, etc. Different rotations in different ways. Okay.
Hmm.
And then when you graduate finally, you just get your MD or your degree or DO, depends on what program you go through. And then after that, you go through a fellowship, no, residency.
Right.
And that's where you really channel yourself into whatever area that you might be interested in.
I remember us having this conversation, and you said to me, it's the amount of studying you did to specialize in the heart, to become a cardiologist is 15 years. That's a lot of time to
So,
study.
yeah. So
Yeah.
let's say, for example, after you get your degree, so you
Right.
finish all medical school. So that's that first 4 years there. You go through internal medicine. So that's where the residency come in. So that would be actually, I think that's like 3 or 4 years. And then you would go into fellowship. And that fellowship is where you start cardiology or whatever special area that you want to go into. So that's where all these years come in.
And then just the funding for it, because you said you had some challenges along the way. It's like because you were part of the first program and not necessarily
Oh,
getting the funding. Like, I mean,
oh,
med school is like a lot of money. And even at that time when you were studying, just getting the funds together, right? Because you
Right.
can't work and go to med school. Were you
Oh
able to
no,
work? There's no way, right?
no, I couldn't do that. I mean,
Yeah.
it's and that's the thing. It's a big struggle. So part of it, but the scholarship was part scholarship in the sense that I had to. And that's why after graduation, I went down to Grenada and I was down there for 2 years, after
Oh,
graduation.
okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
to pay back the government, that scholarship that I was given, that was
Mhm.
granted, I should say. We are poor people. I mean, there's no
Yeah,
way.
it's a little bit of passion and a little bit of perseverance and clear
a-
determination, Uncle
And
Diego.
that's the very reason why I couldn't flunk out of medical school. No matter what it took, I was
Right.
going to make it,
Yeah.
because, if you didn't, what else,
But you didn't want to just become like a family doctor. You wanted to study cardiology. When was the time when you were like, this is my specialty, I want to do this?
That's a very good question, actually. And again, it came back to me with an instant. While I was in England
Hmm.
doing one of the, I think it was the ICU rotation. You may have heard while you're in the hospital, the code blue, they would call it
Yeah.
code blue. Yeah. So there was this arrest that patient arrested in intensive care unit with, the heart stopped and, flat line and breathing thing. And then they have this code blue team. So a number of doctors, the pulmonology or the EKG technician, everybody runs to that patient and do their little part. And then the cardiologist came in and he said, do this. And he called some medicine and stuff. And then, the next thing after they put that medicine in, the patient a shock and boom, the heart rate came back and that person, started to breathe and stuff. I said, God, that's what I want to do. you know and
Wow.
that's where
Yeah.
the idea from cardiology came. Once I got into residency, which is the general medicine itself, after the 3 years of training, I applied to get into cardiology fellowship
And
for that
where
very
did you
reason.
get into
That was in
cardiology? That was in,
Philadelphia in
yeah.
Episcopal Hospital, which had a joint program with Medical College of Pennsylvania, and that's where I did that residency and fellowship. Even when I left Grenada in '86, what was happening? To tell you the honest truth, even though that I was working on the ward as a junior officer, is what they termed us, because we worked under the British system, like house officer, and the bigger doctors or the trained doctors would be I don't remember exactly what the name was,
Yeah. Well,
but
I
anyway,
mean,
I would
we're going back in history, right? So, I
Dr.
mean,
Budlaw. Dr.
yeah.
Budlaw was over us, and then the
Mm.
graduates of SGU, and I was the only one there at that time, coming back with our MD. There was no upgrowth for me. I just had to be there. And even University of the West Indies is really what trained our doctors in Grenada, like the Caribbean doctors.
Yes.
And then they never recognized our school as yet. St. George's University was not recognized by them. So our trained doctors couldn't really advance into that program, if you may. So all I was able to do is just be a house officer, a doctor on the ward.
Thank you for listening to Nutmeg Nation with Carlene Humphrey.